A couple weeks ago, one of my favorite albums in a very long time was released. Knox released his debut album, Going, Going, Gone, and the whole thing front to back is perfection. In addition to that, we also just got a new Band Camino release, and I know they have more music on the horizon, so I figured now would be the perfect time to do another how to make pop rock style tutorial. So in this video today, we're going to be looking at how to make a song like Knox, the Band Camino, even bands like the Maine, basically all of those acts who write pop songs but then put the instrumentals and the production of a rock song behind them. So we're going to dive in. We did a video like this a couple years ago. If you want to check out the previous one, there will be a link in the description, but this one will definitely be updated and sound completely different, so stay tuned. But before we dive in, I do want to go ahead and thank today's sponsor, which is GGD. GGD just released their brand new standalone flagship drum library, Modern and Massive 2. Modern and Massive 2 is the follow-up to their extremely popular Modern and Massive, but they've added a ton of new sounds and features. First off, Modern and Massive 2 is standalone. You will not need to run it as Contact or as Battery or Groove Agent or anything like that. You can simply load up the plugin like you would any other third-party plugin in any recording software that you have. And secondly, they have so many different sounds. Just because it's called Modern and Massive 2 does not mean that it had really anything recycled from Modern and Massive 1. You get a whole bunch of new stuff. In this library, you're going to get 7 kicks, 9 snares, 13 toms, and 21 cymbals that were recorded in the most amazing rooms possible with some of the best gear possible, and they are played to perfection. All of the raw tones in this library sound absolutely beautiful, but if you want to mix it, that's where they really took it to the next level. They added a whole suite of mixing plugins so you can do your compression, EQ, saturation, limiting, clipping. You can basically do your entire drum mix inside of GGD, which is what we're going to do in this video today. You're going to see me do a drum mix with literally no third-party stuff whatsoever. And the last thing that I want to mention about Modern and Massive 2 before we dive in is that they included a ton of presets to go ahead and get started. You have over 1,500 MIDI grooves that were played by a live drummer, and they have over 100 mix-ready presets that were done by some of the biggest producers in pop and rock. So if you want to hear more examples of it, if you want to see more information, there will be a link in the description. But thank you so much to everybody who always supports our sponsors. That's a great way to support our channel. And thank you to GGD for actually sponsoring this video and letting me try on Modern and Massive 2. But let's dive in. We've got a lot to cover. We're in the session. The first thing that I want to do is start with some kind of little guitar riff. I figure that in pop rock like this, it's a little easier to start with some kind of melodic riff rather than just ripping drums. So I'm going to lay down a little electric guitar riff and we'll go from there. This is going to be our main riff for the verse. It is double tracked, once pan to the left and once pan to the right. I am using a Fender Strat, and for this, it's on the middle pickup. I'll turn these up a little bit for you so you can hear. We're going to pop a bunch of tones on, but before we do that, so it's just a nice little 4-chord progression, got some melodies under there, but let's go ahead and add our tone. So to process this, I'm actually using the Neural DSP Tim Henson amp, and I'm using it on this kind of middle amp, which is kind of their clean edge of breakup tone. And for pedals, we're just doing some boost, basically like a Klon type boost, kind of a clean boost in. We're using a compressor, just doing a little bit of compression. And then we are also doing a bit of chorus at like 50% dry and wet, a bit of reverb, and just a hair of delay. EQ-wise, we're not doing anything too wild. We're just controlling some of those low mids. And we are not using the multi-voicer at all. One thing that I have been doing a lot recently is post-processing all of my electric guitar with the AXX by Waves. I believe I saw either Will Carlson or Cam Becker do this, which both of them produced a bunch on the new Knox records. Just a really nice compressor, and then we're just doing a little bit of EQ to take out some of that top end. And we have that exact tone happening on the left and on the right. One thing I will say is if you want to have any of these tones for free, I'll make all of these Neural DSP presets available for free. And I actually made a bunch of the Modern and Massive 2 presets for this tutorial and other uses that I'll also give away for free. So there will be a link in the description if you want the drum presets or the guitar presets completely for free. Here's what it sounds like with our tone. I'm going to go ahead and add a little master chain. That should kind of bring up the level of everything for you guys. The next thing that I want to do is I want to add a little bit of body, so I'm going to track like an acoustic guitar, just doing some little upstrokes, just to give me some mid-range information. So here's what we have for the acoustic. This is just a Taylor 214 CE, and I just tracked it through this Lauten LS208. I'm not really doing anything too wild on the bus, and I'm doing just a little bit of EQ and compression on this, kind of band passing it, controlling some of those low mids, and adding a top boost. And then I'm also adding this trance gate to really make it staccato. I almost wanted it to act more as like a synth element. Without the processing, still sounds great. But that transgate and that compression really kind of just allow those lows to be full without kind of sustaining and muddying up the mix. So that feels good for now. Let's go ahead and let's start laying down some drums. So I am going to open GGD's Modern and Massive 2. All right, we're inside the plugin right now. So what we're going to be doing is I have a preset in here that I've already made. The one that you can download for free that will be today's video is called El Camino. But I just want to kind of walk you around the plugin and walk around what we're doing for the actual tones. So here's the kit that we're going to be using for today's video. We have the kick. This is the British Drumco Legend kick, and in here you can see that you can adjust a lot of your levels and attributes. So you can adjust the level of your overheads, of your kick in versus kick out. You can do your kick sub. For attributes, you can do things like pitch and humanize. This feature, the humanize feature, is incredible for if you like to program everything perfectly on the grid, but you still want it to feel very human. You could easily drag up this velocity and this time humanization. And what it'll do is it'll kind of loosen up some of the hits. So with velocity, the more you drive it up, the more there will be a velocity range. Probably wouldn't have it that high in a mix, but if you go somewhere like 10%, same thing with time, it'll basically start to shift the time. So if you want to humanize your stuff without having to go in and be insanely specific with your MIDI, that's a great way to do so. And then envelopes, this is a great way if you want a little bit less sustain on a kick or a snare. And then the last thing is the one-shots. This is really, really incredible. They have a bunch of one-shots that you can load. Rumor has it that you can also load in your own one-shots in the near future. But right now I'm using two different one-shots, the click head and the clockwork. And I'm using both of those, no pitch, no extra length or anything like that. And that's how you get that kick sound. As far as processing, there is a bit of mixing happening on this. We have some compression. We have a transient designer, adding attack and taking away sustain. If you like a big kind of woolly, fluffy kick, you could drive that sustain up. And then EQ, huge top end boost, big mid-range cut, giving you that clicky rock drum. And then the last thing, the drive in here is so good. I kind of wish that this was its own standalone plugin. Maybe they'll do that in the future. I have no idea. They never told me anything about it. This will add quite a bit of thump. And then we're sending it to the kick parallel. We also have a kick sub with a little bit of EQ, and then we have our kick one shot. Kick one shot, kick sub, kick in. You also have all of the overheads in the rooms back here that basically just have some EQ and some compression. Again, you'll have all of these presets if you want to go in and dissect them. But for the kick, we are using that British Co. For the snare, we're using the Q Drumco plate brass. One thing that I want to say is that a snare will drastically change the vibe of the song and almost a genre completely. If we were to change this to this, feels a little bit more pop punk, feels a little bit more metal, kind of just straight rock. I kind of like that almost woody, brassy sound of the snare. And then for the toms, we were using the Thomas Star Classic, but being a kit. Cymbals, I believe we're going with the Istanbuls for this. Istanbul, Pisces for the splash, Bionic Ride, Istanbul, and Istanbul Holy China. So that's kind of the entire kit. Again, this is the El Camino preset if you want to download it. As for mapping, I have everything pretty standard. You can change all of the maps in here, but there's also a million grooves. So you can either start with a groove, drag and drop it in and change it, or you can program something yourself. I'm going to program something myself, but that is how I'm getting the drum tones for this entire video. So I went ahead and programmed some MIDI. Let's look at what I'm actually doing over here. I will go ahead and change this to show pitch so you can see it a little bit easier. But one thing that I want to show you is look at how the velocities are never perfect. Not everything is completely on the grid. This is huge when you are programming drums. I also have a little bit of that humanization happening inside of Modern and Massive 2. So with the humanization in the plugin and me just shifting things and being really nitty gritty with the velocity, you get a pretty realistic drum. And one thing that I really want to do in a song like this is add some of those little ghost notes, some of those fills, especially like Garrison in the Band Camino. He's always putting chops all over everything. And so if you can just find little areas right here, do a little ghost note. little tom right there. Things like that are what make it feel super exciting rather than just having kind of a driving drum. So when you're working in this pop rock style, especially if the production is pretty stripped back and simple, try to add little fills everywhere. As we play the song, you're going to hear that there's different fills all over the place. No 4 or 8 bars are exactly the same, but they all have the same bass group. They all have the same, hi-hat, kick, and snare relation. Some of them just have an extra snare, some of them have a little roll, some of them have a little tom fill, some of them have an open hat instead of a closed hat. That's kind of what we're working with. All right, that's feeling really, really good. Let's go ahead and let's get a bass in. I'm just gonna track bass with a Fender Jazz bass. Let's talk about bass processing. One thing that I like to do with bass is kind of split the low end and the high end. So for all my low end, I'm basically just using the DI. I don't have an amp sim on it. And I'm just crushing this with an LA2A compressor, basically filtering out all of the high mids and the highs, and then adding R bass to kind of get some of that harmonic information. And one last little Pro Q4 just to control some of that mid-range resonance. And other than that, that's it. I have kickstart so we can sidechain it to the kick, but other than that, feels super fat. I want to add a little bit of crunch and texture, so that's where I'm using something like the Dark Glass. This is also by Neural DSP, and I'm just using this on 100% blend. I'm just adding a bit of crunch. And then we're filtering out all of the low mids. So basically everything below like 280 is out. When you blend them together, always check your phase. Yeah, we'll go ahead and phase cancel that. Let's hear that in the mix. So we're going into a little B verse right here. You can tell by the big ass drum fill that I did. And then the bass is just going to sustain. So instead of cutting off those notes, we're having a little bit of extra sustain. That's a great way to make the second half of the verse feel a little bit different. The next thing I want to do is add basically one more like little guitar part that'll come in for the second half, and then I want to add in some kind of granular guitar textures. So here's what we have for those verse plucks. I'm also using the Tim Henson amp once again, but instead I'm using it on the third amp, kind of the more gainy amp. So we do have a little gain happening. We're using the compressor, but no boost, no overdrive. Not using the multi-voicer, and then just taking out a bit of that 500 so it's not super muddy and kind of thick. And then the chorus is on 100% wet. We have a lot more reverb and a lot more delay. Other than that, it's the same thing, just the AXX, and then kind of a huge mid-range boost in here. And we're doing that on the left and the right, and you get something really, really nice. Actually, on the right, I forgot. I do a different tone. So I wanted them to feel a little bit more separated. So we're actually using the clean amp, but we're using it in the down position, channel 2. And I'm just letting this be super scooped, super clean, super plucky. Having different tones on different sides is a good way to get stereo width because our ears perceive differences in left and right, and that's what makes things feel wide and special. So instead of just copying that tone, I have two slightly different ones. So that's kind of happening there. Let me show you what it sounds like when it comes in. And then for the last little bit of ear candy in the verse, we're doing these granular kind of guitar throws. And these are essentially I ran a bunch of guitar tracks through like a pedal, actually a few pedals, the Chase Bliss Mood Mark II, the Chase Bliss Onward, the Hologram Microcosm, and the Hologram Chroma console. And literally just looped it for about 5 minutes, played a bunch of different stuff, and then took some of my favorite moments and chopped them into little moments. And all of that is 100% accidental. When I use pedals, especially pedals like that, I like to kind of go in with no game plan, just record a bunch of stuff and take my favorite little areas and turn them into something cool. We have another one back here. I want things that you can't ever really replicate. Then we have another little granular lane right here. That's from the Microcosm. That's from the Onward. That's from the Mood into the Chroma console. And then the last little thing that we have is I just did this little harmonic accent. And then I'm processing that with Tim Henson once again. I think this is just the lead tone that we had earlier. Yeah. And then I'm taking it a step farther by adding the Roland Juno chorus, and then Infiltrator with the beat, repeat, and cut preset. And I'm just automating the mix up, and then a little bit of shimmer and a little bit of portal. I'm just trying to like basically mangle this audio as much as possible. So when you add all those into the mix, they kind of just act as these nice little moments. Let me go ahead and automate that down so it doesn't keep playing. Let's show this automation. Boom. Let's go to the volume. There we go. All right. And then that's pretty much it for the verse. I think we're good. I'll add like risers and hits and stuff later. Let's move on to the pre-chorus though. I want to do a big Knox Band Camino style dropout chorus. So I'm going to track some acoustic guitars, just super stabby. And then I'm going to layer that with some kind of single coil crunchy guitars. This is probably the part that everybody will wait for in a Knox/Band Camino tutorial. I just have these acoustic guitars that are changing up the chord progression a little bit. Super bright, super compressed, super stabby. Again, we're just using the AXX, and I'm doing a lot of compression on these. And then we're essentially just boosting tons of top end and really taming all of those low mids. We have that on the left and the right, giving us a nice big. And then to layer that, add a little bit of texture. We have these crunchy guitars on left and right. Let's talk about this tone, because this tone is very, very good, in my opinion at least. We have the Tim Henson once again. I actually don't always go for this one. A lot of the time I'll go for like the Fortin Cali Suite or the Gojira amp, but it was just doing it for me today. So I have the boost, doing a clean gain boost. I have a ton of compression, actually only like 50-50, not crazy. And then a bit of gain, bass is at noon, mid is at 10 o'clock on the clock, by the way. So noon, 10, trebles at noon, presence is at noon, everything else is at noon. Cab, we've basically got the Royer, and then we've got the 160. No multi-voicer. I can turn that off to save CPU. Literally no EQ. And then we are doing a bit of chorus, but no reverb and no delay. And chorus on this super crunchy tone is what makes it feel super reminiscent of somebody like the Band Camino. They love chorus, they love phaser, they love flanger. It gives it like this like psych rocky, almost like 80s stadium rock aesthetic. And you can hear that all the way back to Daphne Blue. So we're doing that on this, and then we're doing a bit of compression, and then EQ-wise, nothing wild, but just kind of like adding in some of that mid-range just to make sure that it can really pop out of a speaker. So again, I'll have all of these guitar and drum presets, but we have... Again, using some of those granular things from earlier. Let's go ahead and add drums. I'm only adding drums to the second half, but I want to do like some kind of tom thing. And this is where these grooves really, really come in handy. So you can find bridges in here. And if you double click it, So I'm going to start with one of those and then kind of do my own little fills. So here's what we have for drums. We are starting with the, what was that preset? I believe it was the Rock Song 4 Bridge 6. It was one of them. But then I just added some of my own changes. We're doing a big kind of tom buildup. So that's what we're doing. We put that with the guitar. I want to add a little bit of bass, and then I want to add one little synth idea. For the synth, I wanted to do this little thing where I'm kind of like adding onto the guitar chords. So I'm just doing this little melody. It was done in Serum, and it's basically just a saw wave and a square wave with a bunch of distortion plucking. With the guitars, it sounds so nice. Then we have bass come in. We'll do a nice little mute right there. And with the drums, we have something that feels super pre-chorusy. Now let me show you what I was talking about earlier. If we were to change this snare drum to, let's go to something like the, like super thumpy. I believe this is in my Let It Rip kit. There's a preset for. So some people may like that one better. I'm liking the kind of higher pitch brass. But that's kind of handling everything there. Let's go into the chorus, and then I'll do like ear candy, and then we'll finish with vocals. But for the chorus, I want to start with drums. Here we have the drums for the chorus. One thing that I do want to mention is while I'm not doing any extra processing, I did go ahead and multi this out so I could adjust levels throughout the song and kind of automate. So if you are using GGD's Modern and Massive 2, much like in a Contact player, you can do all of your multi-out. So all of the presets that I'm giving you will just be a stereo out. But for this, I have an out for the kick drum, I have an out for the snare drum, I have an out for each tom, I have an out for the hat, all the overheads, rooms. But it just makes it so if I want to go ahead and, process things, I have just that kit. I can do that if I want to. All right, let's get into this chorus. So chorus, we're going a little bit busier on the hat. There's a lot of kind of hat options in here. So you can go all the way closed with like a super kind of like sticky hit. A little bit more open. Kind of a medium open. And then your foot close. So you can get really nitty gritty with this. You can, instead of just automating velocity, if you want to have, notes that are actually on a completely different hi-hat hit, it might add a little bit of realism. We're doing that every now and then. We have open hits, and then we have these that are just a hair more open. Of course, right here we have a roll, so no hats are happening. A drummer only has 2 hands and 2 feet. That's a big thing when I'm programming drums, is I try to do things. Even like these little ghost notes right here, these could probably be a little bit lower velocity. And again, there's no extra processing happening. If we were to let's listen to the kick and the snare with none of the processing on them, just so you can kind of hear what they would sound like. So here we go. So again, everything sounds super, super clean as is, even if we listen to all the rooms and overheads. I will say one thing when you start getting into mixing your own drums, rooms and overheads are so much of a drum sound. Don't overlook those. I think 90% of this snare drum mix is mainly overheads. Like if we were to mute the overheads, and especially if we were to mute the rooms as well, but let's turn on all of our processing again so you can hear the final. So that's what we have for the chorus. We're keeping it upbeat. One thing that I did go ahead and add is we are doing a downbeat chorus right here where it's just halftime. So drum program wise, feeling pretty good about that. Drum tone wise, I'm feeling great about that. Let's go ahead and let's add in our chorus guitars. So we're going to be doing a lot of these, but I am going to allow the crunchy guitars and the distorted guitars to sustain just a hair more. Let's take a look. So we have our main crunchy guitars. They're actually not sustaining. I just copied and pasted. But what I am doing is I'm adding this extra layer. This is huge for if you want that kind of wall of sound. And for this one, we're actually using the Gojira amp from Nero DSP, and I have the Fatso doing an octave drop down. It's at about 55% wet, and then no pedals. Everything here is basically at noon, and that's it. We have a little bit of reverb, and then we are doing a flanger. This is with the Arturia flanger, and this is where you kind of get that like really Daphne blue see-through kind of phasey tone. And we have it lower in the mix. There's not as many like high mids, and it's really just to add that spaciness. We also have these little kind of thwacky upbeat guitars. These are using the Corey Wong amp. A little bit of compression, a little bit of overdrive. We're going into the third amp with the drive and the bright tone on. Then other than that, some 80s chorus. It's one of my favorite choruses ever. And then quite a bit of reverb and delay. And then when you play everything together, including the acoustic guitar from earlier, let me copy and paste that over as well. Here's what you get with all of the guitars. Put that with the drums. Let's just add the bass underneath. It's not going to be doing anything too wild. And I'm going to add that synth as well from earlier, but we're not going to cut it. I'm just going to have it be sustained with a delay on it. So here we have the bass. And in the mix, it adds a nice little bit of movement. Here's that little ARP. And then other than that, when we go into that big breakdown, the bass is just sustaining. And I've added one little guitar that is kind of instrumental, actually. It's this heavy guitar in the middle. We are using the Gojira again, doing that tone that we had earlier. But I'm using the Roland Dimension D just to spread it out. It is really, really wild sounding. But inside the mix, it adds so much body in kind of the center of the stereo field. I probably won't have a vocal in this area, so it can kind of take up that room. Other than that, we added a couple little ear candy things. We added like tambourines. We added a reverse snare and then a tambourine hit. We added tambourines under the chorus. These are just live tracked with a $50 tambourine on this microphone right here. And then other than that, we have all of our automation. I'll go ahead and hide that. And then we have a little bit of ear candy. We just have some risers and hits and things like that. So we have a riser right here. We have another little riser here. And then other than that, that's kind of it. We have these little flanger guitars. It's essentially just a clean guitar with the shimmer effect on this reverb, and then a flanger. We're doing that. And then in the post-chorus, we're doing the same thing, just with a little bit more gain. And that's kind of everything instrumentally. Let's go ahead and let's talk about vocals, because we do have some of that to talk about. So for vocal arrangement in the verses, we're just doing one kind of vocal up the middle. It was recorded on a Sony C800 going into a Rupert Neve Designs Newton, into an AudioScape 1176 Rev D, into an AudioScape Opto comp. And then for the main vocal, I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over it. It's just basically EQ, compression, and de-essing. It sounds like this.
We were full steam ahead, but bracing for a head-on collision.
Without anything.
We were full steam ahead, but bracing for a head-on collision.
Again, not much processing happening at all. It sounds pretty good, pretty dry. One thing about Knox's vocals are normally very, very dry in a mix. And Band Camino's will normally be pretty dry and up front, and then I'll add this little layer in a second.
We were full steam ahead, but bracing for a head-on collision.
To get that kind of Band Camino effect, I'm doing this little crush slapback where I have the vocal chain, but then I'm adding some extra EQ to get rid of low end, and then I'm adding Devil Lock by Sound Toys. This is just kind of really crushing everything. Let me show you what that sounds like.
We were full steam ahead, but bracing for a head.
And then I'm doing a slapback with Echo Boy at 100% wet. And then I'm just doing a bit more EQ to kind of filter out some of those lows when they get really distorted. And this is kind of that slapbacky, vibey vocal that you might hear in like a Band Camino verse. And you can just fade this up to taste.
We were full steam ahead, but bracing for a head-on collision.
I'm gonna drag it back.
You opened my eyes to the world, but lately I've been getting tunnel vision.
We have a cool little throw right here. It's just the lead vocal, and then we added Devil Lock, or we added Auto Pan.
I've been getting tunnel vision.
We added Devil Lock.
I've been getting tunnel vision.
Crazy crushing it. We added a flanger.
I've been getting tunnel vision.
We added this EQ. I'll add this now to stop killing your ears.
I've been getting tunnel vision.
And then we added Spaced Out, where we're just automating it to add a little bit of reverb and delay.
I've been getting tunnel vision.
Moments like that are always really, really fun in these pop rock tracks.
I've been getting tunnel vision. Wrong place, wrong time, right person, wrong life. Trying to fit a square peg in a circle.
We have these little harmonies coming in on the B verse.
Trying to fit a square peg in a circle.
Lots of saturation on them just to kind of make them feel really separated from the lead.
Trying to fit a square peg in a circle. Our ties won't bind. I'm losing my mind. There's a million different mountains to hurdle.
Now we're going into the, I guess what actually is like a chorus, but it's the A part of the chorus where we drop out. We have a lead vocal, and then we just have a dub on the left and the right.
If I know what to say and you know what to do, if the leaves never die and the sky's always blue, if we can change who we are and run away from the truth.
Pulling in the slapback vocal for the second half.
And run away from the truth. In a perfect world, I'd be perfect with you.
Then going into the full chorus, we have lead vocal, dub left and right.
We can run from the signs and pretend that we're great. Out of sight, out of mind, baby, the damage can wait.
We also have these harmonies.
We can run from the signs and pretend that we're great. Out of sight, out of mind, baby, the damage can wait. We can push the inevitable to another towards an expiration date.
Extra little harmonies coming in there. And then the last thing is I just have this middle crunch layer. I just sang the vocal one extra time.
And pretend that we're great. Out of sight, out of mind, baby, the damage can wait.
Doing something similar to the first slapback, but we're doing it 100% in the middle of the stereo field, just to add a little bit of that extra body in the middle so that lead vocal can cut through. So when you hear all of those vocals together.
And pretend that we're great to you. We can run from the signs and pretend that we're great. Out of sight, out of mind, baby, the damage can wait. We can push the inevitable to another day. But what good is it for if we're both moving towards an expiration date?
And then the last thing is this little post-chorus chop. I know I'm going to get a ton of questions on this. Again, it's just the lead vocal.
Expiration date.
Panning, double locking, flanger. It's basically what we did for that throw in the verse, but we have it brighter.
Expiration date. Expiration date. I know we're approaching our expiration date.
And to be honest, I might do a little bit of de-essing over here. I don't really need any of those S's.
Expiration date. Expiration date. I know we're approaching our expiration date.
Because it's super in the background. That's just in the halftime. And that's pretty much it. We've got some automation happening right here. The master chain is gold clip, red compressor, mix head, Sontex, just adding a little bit of mid-range. Kind of the normal suspects for our channel. A little bit of Lin MB just to shape it just a hair. And then a limiter. That's kind of it. And then when you add all of that together, you're going to get this. But before I show you that last little example, once again, thank you so much to GGD for sponsoring today's video. Modern and Massive 2 is honestly one of my favorite drum libraries I've ever used. I'm not just saying that because it's sponsored. I've used the original Modern and Massive for years. I have a bunch of other GGD stuff. It's all great. But Modern and Massive 2 really is just in a league of its own for every kind of drum library, very, very similar. And there's just so many more options, like having all of the snares, having all of the kicks, having all of the mixing suite plugins. I'm telling you, go try it out. All of the links for that will be in the description. Thanks again to GGD. Let's go ahead and show you what we made.
We were full steam ahead, but bracing for a head-on collision. You opened my eyes to the world, but lately I've been getting tunnel vision. Wrong place, wrong time, right person, wrong life. Trying to fit a square peg in a circle. Our ties won't bind, I'm losing my mind. There's a million different mountains to hurdle. If I know what to say, and you know what to do. If the leaves never die, and the sky's always blue. If we can change who we are and run away from the truth. In a perfect world, I'd be perfect with you. We can run from the signs and pretend that we're great. Out of sight, out of mind, baby, the damage can wait. We can push the inevitable to another day. But what good is it for if we're both moving towards an expiration date?
And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching up until this point. We really, really appreciate it. Again, my name is Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. If you like this video, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. It does help us out a ton. We have videos like this every single Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Lastly, thank you again to GGD for sponsoring today's video. Modern and Massive 2, so much fun. I'm so happy with how this came out. Big shout out to the Band Camino. Big shout out to Knox. Also, if I sounded like I lost my voice a little bit, we actually went and saw Knox last night. Concert was great. Shout out Knox, shout out Cam, shout out Christian, shout out Townsend. If y'all see this, appreciate you guys. But other than that, leave a comment down below and let us know what videos you want to see in the near future. And we'll be back next Friday. Much love. Peace.